Hello and welcome. I hope your 2026 is off to a good start. In my case, I am still lagging behind on, updating you on what I've read. So now we're going to go through the last books I read in 2025. So we're going to cover November and December. If you hear some weird knocking, it's my neighbors who just now decided it's the perfect time to, nail stuff to the walls or whatever. So I do apologize for that. Also, in breaking news, I got a new camera, so if you're seeing better quality, that's the reason. So our first book is Monstrous Nights, which is the second book in the series written by Genoveva Dimova. So she's a Bulgarian author, and she published this romantasy in the UK. Okay, so she published this abroad in English. It's originally written in English. So when I first saw Foul Days, which is the first book in the series, I was really excited and I want to support the author because, I'm Bulgarian. We gotta support each other. It's a small country. We have to celebrate our successes. In this story, we follow Kosara. She's a witch and she lives in a world that's basically separated into two. We have Chernograd and Beograd. And they were separated by a wall. Oh, is that a spoiler? Well, they are still separated by a wall. It just functions differently from the way it functioned in book 1. But what happens in this world is that after the New Year, for a certain period of time, I think it was 13 days or something like that, monsters come out from the monster realm. And they start inhabiting Chernograd and basically terrorizing its people, killing people and whatever. And it's the witches fighting them and protecting the people. While on the other side of the wall, Beograd, monsters can't go in. It's the wall that protects them. And because of stuff that happened in book 1, what happens is in book 2 is that suddenly monsters start appearing even though it's nowhere near the beginning of the new year. So we have to find out why. And we still see that the villain that we had in book 1 hasn't actually been fully defeated. The villain is Kosara's ex. He's the Zmei, who is the king of monsters. So we pretty much follow the investigation of why the monsters are appearing. We also follow another plot line that wasn't completely finished in book 1 around the mafia. And we follow the romance story between Kosara the witch and Asen the investigator. That's pretty much the plot of the book. It is an interesting story. Its roots are in Balkan folklore, like Slavic folklore, and it is kind of dark-ish, and it was really nice to see Bulgarian culture sort of trying to make its way into the book. And you can also see these elements here, because it is still the same world. And it is rather interesting. However, the writing style to me is a little bit bland, also repetitive. The character arcs are rather lacking in development. Like you read this and you think that there will be some development, and the way it's written, it's like it's leading you to some character development, but they all just kind of remain the same. And while the first book is strictly from the POV of the female character, the second book it has dual POV, so you have the female character and the main love interest dude. And speaking of the love interest, in both books, the romance element is really forced to me and I couldn't connect to it. I couldn't really care about the love story. And in general, aside from the world building, I found this series kind of lacking. Okay, it felt very rushed. Like the author wanted to present us with this story so much and these characters so much that in her rush, we didn't get enough time to kind of sit with them as people and establish them as strong individuals that go through character development. It's not a bad series. I still enjoyed it. I would still recommend it to some people who want to read a Balkan-inspired fantasy, but it does get a 3 out of 5. Next up, I read an arc that I was really excited about because it's written by Heather Fawcett, who's the author of the Emily Wilde series, which I really like. So I got approved for the arc for Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter, which was a really endearing and very cute book, okay? It is a cozy fantasy. The author's writing style is just really charming. She's really good at getting you into the world, right? And feeling the emotions that the characters are feeling and just being immersed into this magical, enchanting, mysterious setting. The characters felt real, they were consistent, which is really important to me. There was character development, the story progressed at a good pace. It was really cute, it was a very fast read. I am a little bit disappointed at the conclusion, but overall, it was a really good book. Once again, I'm not telling you anything about the book, okay. So Agnes runs a cat shelter and the story is set in a world where there is magic, but magicians are generally very frowned upon because they have so much power and they do cause destruction and they disrupt people's lives. So what happens in the beginning is that Agnes is looking for a new place to rent because her cat shelter was pretty much destroyed by 2 magicians battling it out. And somehow she is led to this building which is obviously magical. But she doesn't really have a choice because most places don't really want to rent to people with lots of cats. And the owner of that magical house is pretty much the only one who is willing to rent to her at an affordable price, and even just rent to her at all. She kind of swallows her disdain towards magic and she stays there. And as the story progresses, we slowly learn why that house is magical, and we meet the owner of the house who, spoiler alert, he is a magician, obviously. And then the story kind of progresses from there. So our main concern in this book pretty much is just keeping the cat shelter going and getting more cats adopted. And in the meantime, kind of unraveling the mystery around the owner. It was absolutely adorable. Ambulance, my god, that's my favorite cat. He really reminded me of my poor precious Chucky, who passed away a long time ago, but he is the love of my life and I miss him lots. And it was fun and endearing and very touching to read about a cat kind of like him. So yeah, I miss my cats. This book gets a 4 out of 5. Next up, I read another arc that I was also very excited about because I was invited for it, and it was The Shattering Peace by John Scalzi. I absolutely loved When the Moon Hits Your Eye, and I did buy more of Scalzi's books, but I haven't really gotten to them. But then I got invited for this arc. I was like, oh my god, that's amazing, because I gave When the Moon Hits Your Eyes 5 stars. It was like, oh, another amazing read. However, here we have the case of it's not you, it's me. Like, for real, we do have it's not you, it's me. Because when I accepted the invite, I had absolutely no idea that this book was actually a part of a series. It was like book 8 or something. And while they say that you could read it without having read the rest of the books in the series, I really don't think that's the case. Because I had absolutely zero emotional connection to whatever was happening, to the world, to characters. I couldn't care at all, to be honest. And while yes, Scalzi's writing style is fun, it wasn't enough to get me into the story. And that's the thing, I can't really give this book a fair rating because I haven't read anything in the series. I might read the series at some point, it's called Old Man's War, but until then, I can't really give this a proper rating, unfortunately. And then I read a fanfic called Bad Omens, and it was an absolute delight. As I've said previously, if a fanfic is more than like 200-300 pages, then I am going to include it in my, book stats and whatever, because it's so long, okay? And a lot of fanfics are written very, very well. Now, did I read more fanfics? I did. I kind of lost track. And to be honest, if I have lost track, then they weren't really worth mentioning. So I'm not even going to bother mentioning more fanfics. But Bad Omens was rather good. Maybe you can tell that it is a reference to Good Omens by Terry Pratchett. And Bad Omens is basically a Hermione take on Good Omens. But it is very, very, very heavily rewritten. But it does kind of carry the spirit and the main plot of Good Omens, and because I'm a huge fan of that book, like a huge fan, I have read it I think 3 or 4 times, and I remember after I first read it, I kept buying it for friends for their birthdays because I really enjoyed it so much. So this was an exciting fanfic, and it does get a 4 out of 5. And I do not accept any judgment, okay? Okay. And then I read this wonderful, chunky book, The Raven Scholar, which is book 1 in the series, and if you're not ready to commit, because book 2 is not out yet, if you're not ready to commit to the wait, don't read it yet. So there are, I would say, 4 main plot elements in this book. So we have a scholar that's pretty much forced to participate in a competition for the throne, while in the meantime she has to investigate a murder. So we have a murder mystery. We also have a romance element, and we do have lots of politics and plotting. So these are the 4 main things. Now, why is there a competition for a throne? Basically, the way the system is set in this world is that for you to become a ruler, you're not chosen based on your birthright, but based on your performance in this competition. And this competition happens every, I think, was like 28 years or something, probably not. When you're a ruler, you have a set mandate, and when that mandate is done, you can't be a ruler again. So one contestant from every fraction gets to compete for the position of emperor or empress. We have, I think it was 8 fractions, and they're based on animals, and these animals are their gods. So each competitor is a representative of the temple of a certain god. But when I say temple, don't imagine that they're all like monks or priests or whatever. Like each temple specializes in different things. So in our case, the Raven is a temple of scholars, basically. So which is why we have a scholar competing to be an empress. We do also have a 5th element, which is trying to stop the end of the world. A lot of stuff happens in this book, but somehow it's quite well balanced. There are some little plot holes, but they're not that big and they're not that many for me to get frustrated and to take me out of the story. Now, my main problems with this book are that at the beginning I thought someone else was going to be the main character, and the author very quickly managed to establish a connection between that character and the reader, and then suddenly it was ripped out and someone else was the main character. And it took me a very long time to kind of warm up to that person because I kept thinking that no, I want the other one. To be fair, I still kind of want the other one. But it is what it is. Another thing is that I really can't understand why pretty much absolutely everyone in this book hates the main character. Like everyone and their mother hates the main character. And the only reason that they really give is because of classism. But it's just not, I wouldn't say realistic, but it's just really effing weird, okay? And I do have to say that in my humble opinion, the best thing about this book is the Raven. If you're going to read this book for one reason and one reason only, it should be the Raven. Okay, I'm not going to say more because it will be spoilers, but read this for the Raven. And then the Fox. The Fox is also kind of funny. But the Raven takes #1 place, okay? With that said, I wouldn't say it's like high up there with high fantasies like Brandon Sanderson. It's simply not. But it is very well written, and the story is interesting, and I am looking forward to the second book, which God knows when it's going to come out, but I am looking forward to it. And The Raven Scholar gets a 5 out of 5. And then I read Cat's Cradle, which I am very conflicted about. Because while I did enjoy Kurt Vonnegut's writing style the same way I enjoyed it in Slaughterhouse-5, maybe not halfway through, but a little bit after that, the story itself really started losing me. So in this book, we follow a reporter who is writing a book about the father of the atomic bomb. The father of that bomb has actually left something else after he passed away, like a chemical that can pretty much freeze the whole planet. Now that chemical, of course, is secret, and it's called Ice-9. And while writing the book, the reporter gets in touch with the children of this scientist. And this leads him to going to a country where the youngest child of that scientist has kind of set base, and he is like a leading scientist expert or whatever in that country. And that country is... how should I say it? It's pretty much an example of other countries that are ruled under dictatorships. It's a very poor country with a very strict regime, with a religion that's outlawed, with a very, very huge divide between the rich and the poor and the foreign and the locals. And pretty much every character in this book is a caricature of specific types of people that we see in the world of politics and news and science and research and all that jazz. And the story is told with so much irony. And this is just a satire of the world ending and just the stage in which humanity finds itself. It's both extremely ludicrous, but also extremely realistic. And that makes it scary. But as I said, at some point the story started losing me because it kept getting more ludicrous and more ludicrous. And at the end, the build-up and the conclusion just fell flat. But it is a very smart and very exceptional book. And the main point of this book for me really is what's mentioned a few times in this book, quite bluntly. And it is, see the cat, see the cradle. 4 out of 5. And the final book we're going to talk about is Uprooted, which is a book I have a lot of thoughts about. So we follow a girl that's taken from her village by the dragon. The dragon is a magician, and she's taken to his tower where for 10 years she's supposed to serve him. And after those 10 years end, she is set free. And usually what happens to girls who have been to that tower is that when they leave, they also leave the village, they leave the area where they grew up, and they go into the city and they seek further education and find husbands, and they also get more money. And yeah, but generally no one really wants to go to that place, right? Because once you're in the tower, you don't go out. And usually the dragon takes the most beautiful, most gentle girl from that village. But this time he takes our main character. And she is not the most beautiful, she's definitely not the most gentle, she's not the most kind. But he pretty much senses a spark of magic in her. And that is why he takes her. And so we follow the story of how she learns magic and how she manages to break through the dragon's walls and kind of get, you know, romantically involved with him. Because this is also romantasy. There is also like high stakes because the forest is actually bad and it takes people and turns them into monsters, so we also follow how they fight in the forest. Now the story really is beautifully written. It's enchanting, and I don't mean that in the magical way per se, definitely not in the whimsical sense, but more like it actually feels like a chant. It reads like a stream of chanting songs and spells, which I would say is a rather unique writing style. And the story grips you not so much because of the story itself, but because of how it's written. However, there are some things in this book that really don't allow me to give it more than 3 stars. The world building, while vivid and beautiful, is all over the place. While it does work for the story, it really started to grate on me. There was also absolutely no structure to the magic, okay? Which sometimes I'm okay with that. Like with Agnes Aubert's Cat Shelter, I was okay that there wasn't any structure because of the way the story was written, and while yes, there wasn't a structure, there were limits. But in this book, there are absolutely no limits, and it does read like if you can do magic, you can pretty much do anything you want with it, as long as you felt the right vibes. And while we are told that there is a cost to using magic, at some point our main characters were able to just keep on using magic again and again and again and again and again and again. No matter how exhausted they got, no matter how much power they expanded, they could just get more and use more, which didn't make sense to me, and it started getting very annoying. And while in the beginning our main character feels like she's very well built and very consistent, gradually as she grows into her powers, it kind of feels like she just becomes a conduit for the plot. And then she becomes lost as a person. The world was just pushing her here and there, and she followed. And in a way it makes sense based on how the vibey magic system works, but also at some point it really started to feel more like lazy writing. And I'm also not a huge fan of the trope of the love interest constantly showering the main girl with insults and her falling in love with him nevertheless. Like, have a backbone, girl. So yeah, Uprooted gets a 3 out of 5. And that pretty much sums it up. As always, any book recommendations are welcome. I do have a shelf on Goodreads where I record all of your recommendations, and I'm very slowly making my way through it. If you have read any of the books I mentioned, please feel free to share your reviews, opinions, whatever. This is a safe space. We're all adults here. We can discuss things maturely. And yeah, I will see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye bye. Which button is it?